In 1948, as India celebrated its first post-independence victory, Pakistan's military leadership was forced to confront a brutal geographic reality. They were facing a neighbor 4 times their size with superior conventional resources, an opponent they could never hope to defeat on an open, traditional battlefield. To bridge this gap, Pakistan turned to British intelligence veterans like Major General Cawthorne. Having led British intelligence in Europe during World War II, Cawthorne helped forge the Inter-Services Intelligence, or ISI, staffing the agency with officers trained in sophisticated espionage and psychological tactics. These veterans introduced a foundational philosophy: asymmetric warfare. The strategy is to avoid direct military confrontation entirely, focusing instead on bleeding a superior enemy from within by using small, unseen nodes to chip away at their internal stability. This pivot transformed a standard border dispute into a relentless, invisible war of attrition, a conflict that would be waged across the next several decades. By the 1950s, the ISI was operationalizing this doctrine in India's northeast. They established training camps in the jungles of East Pakistan, supplying Naga and Mizo separatist groups with specialized military training and high-grade weaponry to keep the Indian government permanently distracted. Curious, skeptical tone. These insurgencies were massive, yet the Indian state remained largely blind to the level of foreign coordination behind them. The reason for this oversight was a massive structural vulnerability in India's own security apparatus. India's Intelligence Bureau was a colonial-era organization designed by the British strictly for internal security, monitoring domestic protests and political dissent. While its focus remained fixed on the country's interior, the borders stayed dark, allowing covert foreign infiltration to slip through undetected. This intelligence vacuum led to the crisis of 1965. India found itself fighting a reactive war on 2 fronts, defending against a conventional Pakistani invasion in Kashmir, while simultaneously struggling to contain the insurgencies the ISI had spent 15 years cultivating. Relying on a tool designed for domestic policing had left the Indian state defenseless against modern, covert warfare. In 1968, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and top security advisor R&AW moved to close this gap. They carved external intelligence duties away from the IB and created a dedicated agency from the ground up, the Research and Analysis Wing, or R&AW. The initial odds were staggering. While the ISI was an established network with 10,000 officers, COW began his operation with just 250 personnel, a tiny budget, and a single derelict building as his headquarters. RAW counterbalanced this disparity through a doctrine of preemptive dismemberment. They were no longer tasked with merely detecting threats at the border. Their new mandate was to identify and dismantle the enemy's military and political capabilities while they were still on foreign soil. India had moved from reactive defense to proactive dismantlement. COW's new agency spent the next 3 years embedding itself into the regional landscape, preparing for a single operation that would eventually redraw the map of the subcontinent. By 1971, East Pakistan was on the verge of a civil war. R&AW's human intelligence networks in London provided an early warning. West Pakistan was preparing for a massive military crackdown on the Bengali population. To prevent the crackdown, India needed to sever the logistical air routes that allowed West Pakistan to fly troops across Indian territory. However, blocking their airspace without a clear provocation would have been a violation of international law. Under Operation Ganga, R&AW located Hashim Qureshi, an asset who had been flipped by the ISI. COW convinced Qureshi to work for India, instructing him to go through with an ISI-planned hijacking of an Indian plane. Qureshi diverted the flight to Lahore, where the aircraft was burned on the tarmac. By manipulating the enemy into publicly harboring the hijacker and destroying the plane, R&AW provided the perfect international justification. India closed its airspace immediately, entirely severing Pakistan's military supply line to the east without firing a single shot. On the ground, R&AW launched a parallel strategy. They established secret camps in the Sundarbans to train and arm Bengali rebel forces, the Mukti Bahini, turning the local population into a professional insurgent army. R&AW deployed these forces with strategic precision. They directed the Mukti Bahini to destroy the ISI's own insurgent training camps in the northeast, using the proxy war to settle India's internal security issues while advancing toward the front lines. The operation culminated in a lightning-fast campaign. In just 14 days, the coordinated pressure of R&AW's proxies and the Indian military forced the surrender of nearly 100,000 Pakistani troops, splitting the country in two and creating the nation of Bangladesh. 1971 demonstrated the efficiency of preemptive intelligence operations, the ability to dismantle a rival nation through tradecraft and proxy warfare, faster than any conventional army could achieve alone. The defeat in 1971 did not end the rivalry. It forced the ISI to aggressively adapt. They realized that to counter India's new intelligence capabilities, they would have to escalate their asymmetric tactics far beyond regional border skirmishes. During the 1980s Soviet-Afghan War, the ISI received immense funding and technical training from the CIA. They used this influx of resources to move beyond regional separatists, building a massive infrastructure of hybrid warfare that bridged the gap between militant outfits and underworld criminal networks. These organizations, once small local proxies, grew into sophisticated syndicates capable of high-level coordination. The 2001 Parliament attack and 2008 siege of Mumbai were the results of an apparatus that spent decades perfecting the art of deniable, large-scale violence. In response, R&AW modernized its counter-strategy. They began forging intelligence alliances with neighbors like Mauritius and Bhutan, building a necklace of friendship designed to isolate the ISI's operational influence and secure the region through collective surveillance. While open conventional wars between these two nations have largely ceased, the borders of South Asia remain the front lines of an ever-evolving shadow war, where security is defined not by the size of an army, but by the reach of its intelligence.